In that length of time, of course, the word is all over the place that Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis has been fired. He was allowed to resign, but Trump got rid of him because Trump is showing the depth of his insanity. I just wonder how much more we're going to need before the 25th Amendment is applied and this crazy fucker is removed from office. Mattis said he would depart February 28th to provide time for a replacement to be identified by the psycho Trump and confirmed by the Senate. Now, think about this for a minute. The Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen's about to go. Trump's who's the general inside the White House that works with Trump? Kelly. He's his chief of staff. I'm sorry. I'm really rattled because I don't know what's going to happen now. I'm really concerned. Chief of Staff has resigned. The Secretary of Defense has resigned, or been fired. Just about everybody who has worked for Trump has bailed out once they realize that no matter how hard they try to keep the wheels on this government, they're not going to succeed. Trump is a madman, and he's going to continue to do this. In the meantime, we're not too far away from a complete shutdown of the government. Mattis says he will wait until February 28th to provide this psychopath a chance to name someone else. Let me ask you something. Who is going to take the job of Secretary of Defense when this psychopath decides to completely alter U.S. military policy without telling anyone? He tweets it out. He doesn't consult with the generals. He doesn't consult with the Defense Department. He doesn't consult with the State Department. He gets a wild hair up his ass because he is insane. And he says, well, I think I'll just go ahead and completely change U.S. military/foreign policy because I can. Let me share with you Mattis's letter. Dear Mr. President, I've been privileged to serve as our country's 26th Secretary of Defense, which has allowed me to serve alongside our men and women of the Department of Defense, of our citizens, and our ideals. I'm proud of the program that has been made over the progress that has been made over the past 2 years on some of the key goals articulated in our national defense strategy, putting the department on a more sound budgetary footing, improving readiness and lethality in our forces, and reforming the department's business practices for greater performance. Our troops continue to provide the capabilities needed to prevail in conflict and sustain strong U.S. global influence. One core belief I have always held is that our strength as a nation is inextricably linked to the strength of our unique and comprehensive system of alliances and partnerships. While the U.S. remains the indispensable nation in the free world, we cannot protect our interests or serve that role effectively without maintaining strong alliances and showing respect to those allies. Like you, I have said from the beginning that the armed forces of the United States should not be the policemen of the world. Instead, we must use all tools of American power to provide for the common defense, including providing effective leadership to our alliances. NATO's 29 democracies demonstrated that strength in their commitment to fighting alongside us following the 9/11 attack on America. The Defeat ISIS coalition of 74 nations is further proof. Similarly, I believe we must be resolute and unambiguous in our approach to those countries whose strategic interests are increasingly in tension with ours. It is clear that China and Russia, for example, want to shape a world consistent with their authoritarian model, gaining veto authority over other nations' economic, diplomatic, and security decisions in order to promote their own interests at the expense of their neighbors, America, and our allies. And that is why we must use all the tools of American power to provide for the common defense. My views, excuse me, I'm sorry. My views on treating allies with respect and also being clear-eyed about both malign actors and strategic competitors are strongly held and informed by over 4 decades of immersion in these issues. We must do everything possible to advance an international order that is most conducive to our security, prosperity, and values, and we are strengthened in this effort by the solidarity of our alliances. Because you have the right to have a Secretary of Defense whose views are better aligned with yours on these and other subjects, I believe it is right for me to step down from my position. The end date for my tenure is February 28, 2019, a date that should allow sufficient time for a successor to be nominated and confirmed, as well as to make sure the department's interests are properly articulated and protected at upcoming events, to include congressional posture hearings and the NATO Defense Ministerial meeting in February. Further, that a full transition to a new Secretary of Defense occurs well in advance of the transition of Chairman of the Joint Chiefs in September in order to ensure stability within the department. I pledge my full effort to a smooth transition that ensures the needs and interests of the 2 million service members and 732,000 Department of Defense civilians, that they receive undistracted attention of the department at all times so they can fulfill their critical around-the-clock mission to protect the American people. I very much appreciate this opportunity to serve the nation and our men and women in uniform. Jim Mattis. You notice how he signed off. Not, I appreciate the opportunity to serve your administration. Mattis's attitude right now, I'm guessing, is this fucker's insane. I want to get as far away from Trump as I can. Now, it's been said over and over in the past hour and a half that Jim Mattis would never abandon his post under any circumstances. And that includes Secretary of Defense. So based on that, the conclusion is, when he went in to see Trump this afternoon with this letter and read it to him, because Trump can't read, that Trump got real porky with him, real pricky with him, and told him that since he felt that way, Trump is one of those guys that says, well, you can't quit, I fire you. And since he realized that Mattis had had enough of his shit, that's when Trump said, well, there's the door. Now, here we are, the diplomatic and military establishment of this country is coming apart at the seams because Trump is ripping it to pieces. It's one thing to have the luxury of being incredibly critical of the policies that this country may be involved in. It's something else, again, to have the security to be able to make those kinds of statements. And all of a sudden, this evening, now, I don't feel I or any of us have that security. I have to tell you, as somebody who has seen an awful lot over the course of my life, I said I came of age with the assassination of John Kennedy. I went through the entire Vietnam War build-up and our defeat, the crimes committed by Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan and George Bush and George Herbert Walker Bush, and the duplicity of Bill Clinton, the at times fecklessness of Barack Obama. It's understandable why he was hesitant to present himself as a strong leader. White Americans are terrified of the scary black man. And now Trump. And along the course over the past half century plus, I have watched real needs of the American people be ignored. Laws passed that enshrine a sick, twisted religion. Laws passed to specifically demonize certain members of this society, this culture, this country. I've watched this drift to fascism. I have many times added my 2 cents worth of effort to try, if not stop that drift, at least have allowed Bullhorn to scream that it was happening in case nobody was paying attention. But nothing that I've seen so far has left me in the mental state, not the emotional state necessarily, but the mental state that I find myself in tonight, knowing that Trump has fired or forced the resignation of Jim Mattis. In his letter of resignation, a couple of sentences. He says, while the U.S. remains the indispensable nation in the free world, we cannot protect our interests or serve that role effectively without maintaining strong alliances and showing respect to those allies. Trump is systematically destroying the alliances that have been carefully constructed and put together over the past, well, since the end of World War II. He's blowing them all up. Mattis mentions NATO's 29 democracies. I would disagree with him that all 29 NATO members are democracies. I mean, Turkey is a member of NATO, please. But he says NATO's 29 democracies demonstrated the strength in their commitment to fighting alongside us following the 9/11 attack on America by Saudis. And what is Trump's relation with the murderous Saudi ruling family, and Jared Kushner's relationship, and Donald Trump Jr.'s relationship with the murderous Saudis? He says, if you need further proof of the strength of alliances, the Defeat ISIS coalition is comprised of 74 nations. Trump today decided to walk out. We know he's a coward. We know he's easily manipulable. And the voices in the fascist media in this country got to him. People like Laura Ingraham and Ann Coulter and Rush Limbaugh got inside his empty fucking head today over the past 3 days and convinced him to walk away from the situation we're facing in the Middle East, to shut down the government. Meanwhile, the stock market is losing hundreds of points a day. Wait until tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be the day when a lot of us see our 401ks or our stock holdings wiped out. How much more of this are we going to put up with? It's clear that the Republican Party leadership, even though they're acting a little bit jumpy tonight, they're not going to do anything to stop this madman.
Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. You have your choice. You can listen to the ranting with the audio podcast or listen and watch me lose control with a video podcast subscription. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.